I don't want us to miss any of this. And I have a special guest joining me so we can dissect this in detail. So if you've been wondering where the GOP stands in terms of for our nation and what's going to happen, please stay tuned. And also, we're going to be hitting on South Carolina as well. This is our home state. We're going to be talking about the elections in our state, the different candidates, and what things have we uncovered about certain candidates that are running for governor. And dissecting all of this with me is a good friend of mine, Lynz Loomis. She has her own podcast, I Am Silent No More. She also has a book out as well that sells very well as well. So you can check that out too on Amazon. And she is also an investigative journalist, and she uncovers a lot of the nitty gritty things that end up sometimes being very costly for her. But she nonetheless does this unrelentlessly, unapologetically, and she is a woman of truth. Lynz, thank you so much for being here with me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. And I was laughing at costing because I have some legal bills coming up from people pushing back against me. So it's just kind of it's not funny because we shouldn't have to deal with that, but it
Yeah.
is in a sense. Thank you for
I mean,
having
this
me.
is this is stuff that the cool thing is, guys. If you're not familiar with her work, I highly recommend you check out her podcast. I Am Silent No More. She does stream on X and on Rumble, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then she also has a TikTok account as well that you could check out. But she uncovers things that end up getting like, this is like sometimes the stuff goes up to like national attention. This is things that people once the FBI starts to investigate this stuff, it actually comes to light that she is telling the truth. And so that's why it's like scary for the people on the other end. And she, I mentioned before, sometimes it's very costly because you're a woman of truth, and you in truth, if you're on the other end of truth, you're somebody that's going to fight against it and even try to do threats, make threats and things like that. So um thank you to you for the work that you put in and for being unrelentless in this area, no matter what it costs, but to love this nation and to love the word of God and truth so much as so that you go after it as you do. um we will be talking a lot about our nation, guys, and getting into South Carolina elections too. So first of all, let's hit on this Maduro extraction thing. This is breaking headlines right now. It's so cool. I mean, I thought it was really cool when I woke up that morning and saw that this was another thing that Donald Trump had done, and it shocked the entire nation. But I think that this is long overdue. He did what no other presidents probably have the guts to do. And the one thing I love about Trump, and I was talking to another friend of mine earlier today at my daughter's birthday party. Her birthday is today. Um, was that people there was a 25 million dollar bounty on his head from the Biden administration, and then that increased under Trump. And all of these nations knew this guy was illegitimate. He had starved his people. He had displaced 8 million Venezuelans. He had put people in prison, political prisoners. He has people have, I've heard reports of people eating dogs and cats in the streets, which is very sick. You went from this booming economy to now just breaking it down. And, you know, this is a long overdue thing. And then Trump did it in a way to kind of like avoid the legalities of it, where it wasn't necessarily him sending in the military to do the work, right? But this was something that I think needed to be done. And if there's anybody who would do it, that would be Trump, because he's somebody who, once he says he's going to do something, even if it comes at the cost of the scrutiny and the a controversy, he's still going to do it, right? And he'll try to do, I feel like he does try to do it the most legal way possible. It may be a little bit of, gray area, whatever, but he does do it in the most legal way possible, and he gets the job done. I heard, I'll leave it at this and I'll let you comment on this, Lynz, but I was listening to his recent meeting that he had with these men that were investors in oil. And he said to one of them that he had told him 6 months ago that things were going to change for the oil industry, and particularly talking about Venezuela. So I had a thought that I wondered if he had this plan of like something has to be done in Venezuela, and maybe saved it until we got closer to the midterms to turn and flip the Hispanic vote if that was being lost. I don't know, but I'll let you comment on what your thoughts is on this, because some people are saying that we're split on the whole Maduro extraction thing. But if you look at the actual polls, more people, even on the Democrat side, actually agree with what Trump has done.
Well, actually, this goes even further back into our elections when our elections were stolen. A couple of things I can point people to. General Michael Flynn released a statement, I think it was last week, and Emerald Robinson. I know she can be controversial, but she actually has been talking about how our elections were stolen through voting machines, Dominion and Smart. Oh, I can't remember, Smartronix or Smartmatic,
Smartmatic.
Smartmatic. Yeah, thank you,
I think
Michael.
so. Yeah.
But anyway, she's actually been commenting on this for a long time, and General Flynn actually met down in Venezuela. I think it was down in Venezuela, and I can be corrected on this a long time ago with whistleblowers. So there is several things behind this extraction, not to mention the fact that they were flooding the U.S. with drugs. Um, I just talked about rigging the elections, which only benefited the Democrats and actually uniparty Republicans that ran on it as well. And then they were aligning with terrorists, Iran, Russia, communists,
Yeah.
obviously China, Cuba, and Hezbollah. So these are all huge things that when people are looking at this like, well, we shouldn't have gotten involved or we should have. I'm not supportive of necessarily I'm not supportive of funding overseas and wars and things like that.
Yeah.
But in this specific situation, so many things changed. And I think just to look at it even from narco terrorism or some of these things, I think it goes a lot deeper than that. There's a lot of strategy behind removing Maduro. Now, it does leave some of his cronies in place.
Yeah.
So, we still have it's not like there was a huge regime change because even the person that has stepped in, she's not clean. I think I just saw an
Yeah.
article this morning that she's also aligned with some type of cartel organization. I could be wrong.
No, no,
I
no.
can be correct.
Let's dissect that. I do want to show this video that we have really quick of Maduro attraction, and then we'll get to the current regime that's in power right now and talk about it.
Don't play games. Don't play games with this president's in office because it's not going to turn out well.
U.S. Special Operations Forces flew in from off the coast of Venezuela to snatch Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and his wife.
This is a president of action. Like, I don't understand yet how they haven't figured this out. And now, if you don't know, now you know.
One of the ways that you establish peace in your own hemisphere is to make it clear that the United States is going to be respected.
Maduro will never again be able to threaten an American citizen or anybody from Venezuela.
This is the Western Hemisphere. This is where we live, and we're not going to allow the Western Hemisphere to be a base of operation for adversaries, competitors, and rivals of the United States.
The United States government has already begun marketing Venezuelan crude oil in the global marketplace for the benefit of the United States.
We will control how it is dispersed in a way that benefits the Venezuelan people, not corruption, not the regime.
This will benefit both the American people and the Venezuelan people.
The 47th President of the United States is not a game player. When he tells you that he's going to do something, when tells you he's going to address a problem, he means it.
I can say that I am 100% proud of Marco Rubio right now. I love how he's been handling the media, as well as JD Vance as well. I don't know if you heard their recent press conference where, and this is a whole nother subject, but JD Vance was addressing the whole issue with ICE and that woman in Minnesota, Minnesota, who lost her life. But I felt they both were no nonsense. They just got straight to the point. They addressed things head on, and they very well communicated the point and of the issue and the truth of the issues. But going back to the regime, you are correct. The current regime, I think it still was connected to Maduro. So the VP, the person that's right now in power, I believe is the VP, that was the VP to Maduro. But however, I was talking to another friend of mine again during my child's birthday party, because she's from Venezuela, so this is on their hearts. And one thing she was saying was that when you saw the video footage before Trump did this extraction, the regime was talking really big, you can come and you can see clips of Maduro saying, "Come and get me, cowards," and stuff. But she said they were talking really big. It's like they had no fear of the United States or anyone. But then after Trump successfully pulled off this extraction that was so well crafted and so well done with the technology that we currently have, displaying American might and power, she said that you can see a total change in their attitude. They're like, we're going to work with the United States. Yeah. And it's a total difference. So yes, the regime is, we still have that regime in place. And I love what Marco Rubio said in an interview, was that, he was questioned on, why didn't you just go in and remove everyone? And he was like, I don't understand like what your reasoning of asking me this question. Basically, I'm summarizing. And he says, this guy was on a military base that was fortified. We had to literally go in there, on this military base, extract him, read him his Miranda rights, put him in handcuffs, and then bring him back to the United States without losing any assets or American lives. And you're asking why we didn't do that in 5 other places, which made complete sense, right? That's why I was like, I'm really proud of Marco Rubio, the way they're handling this. Like, they're just spitting straight facts, and it's unapologetic, and it's just not necessarily blunt, but it was just clear, explanation as to what's going on. But um, the whole thing of Donald Trump, not being able to take them out that way, I think, and Marco Rubio also said this, was that, taking even Maduro out, people are complaining about that, right? And so they did it strategically. They went for the person that claimed that he was the president, when he's a illegitimate president of Venezuela. But couldn't necessarily totally do a regime change, which I think that would be another whole issue, of us and what Donald Trump is doing. That would be something else that Democrats could probably run on, and claiming that he's a dictator, etc., whatever the case might be. But you can see that even though the regime is still in place, and my point is that they have come to this understanding that even though they, some quote unquote, hold the power in Venezuela, they have no power, because Donald Trump is the one calling the shots. And again, when I talked to my friend, she talked about their whole attitude change of, yeah, we're going to work with the United States, and they were not saying that before. So and Donald Trump has, I think, made a threat to her, the current woman that's quote unquote in charge, that if she doesn't comply, something, I guess, worse would be done. So than what we saw with Maduro. So because all of them, I think, have arrest warrants. But yeah, so I think that's what we have to look forward to, is that, this is still even though they are currently, still the regime in power, it's overseen the oil extraction, the whole plan of Venezuela selling their goods to the United States, not just oil, but just, selling their goods to the United States, is all under the control of Donald Trump. And these oil companies have the backing of Donald Trump in terms of protection, because that was one of the things too that I think was an issue, was that, not only that you had these American companies that were working with Venezuela for years, one of them hundreds of years was, working with Venezuela, and they had no security guarantee that if they were to go in and do that work and extract it, that they wouldn't lose those assets, or, somehow be put in danger. So now they have that security from Donald Trump. So yeah, so that's what we stand. It seems like what we stand with the regime. What are your thoughts on this issue, on the regime?
I mean, I agree that they're probably more fearful of Donald Trump. We are underneath a tight timeline with his presidency, so they're probably already planning and scheming for ahead. So I always think, like, we're looking at right now, but what are we going to be doing moving forward? What are our plans, after this current administration is done?
Oh, I think that's good. Yeah. To kind of look ahead. And I think that's what we don't really have clarity on. I know that, we've seen some of the plans from the administration unravel a little bit when they talk about the plan for oil, and how they plan on extracting that and building up that sector again in Venezuela. And also, of course, like I mentioned, selling Venezuela and selling goods to the United States and making that a priority, not only to the United States, because I heard Donald Trump mention that, China, they are inviting all the countries to do business with Venezuela, but all that will be head out through Donald Trump, the Trump administration. So I think that this is a great win for Venezuela, and I think most Venezuelans agree with that. At least the Venezuelans I've talked to and what I've seen online, most of them agree with this, even if they're unsure about how things will play out, because they understand the track record of Donald Trump, how he's even turned around our economy in his first year in office. Now, of course, we're not going to reap the full benefits of that turnaround right now, because all that stuff takes time, with the infrastructure being built, people coming into work, jobs being created, etc. Even though jobs have already started, we won't see the full impact of that, I don't think, until like maybe sometime this year, going into the following year. But I do believe that we will definitely see the Trump effect in the economy. And the Venezuelans, they didn't have oil before. They didn't have any of that, any of that money pouring into their economy to help them, or even have jobs, etc. So I think, having that promise not only from Donald Trump, but Marco Rubio, who's also a part of this, huge part of this, and hearing it reiterated again, I heard it from JD Vance in the recent press conference, is that they do plan on making sure that Venezuela thrives again. But of course, Donald Trump is all about America first. So it has to benefit the American people too, which this move definitely does in terms of security and in terms of revenue. So yeah, let me know if you want to add anything in regards to that Maduro
No, I
extraction.
think you covered it. I mean, I think that one, you covered really good.
Thanks.
So,
I'm excited. I'm excited for Venezuela. Because I'll say this and then we'll move on to the next thing. But seeing a lot of our people, even in our church, that are Venezuelans, and what they have to go through to get here and can't go back home, etc. um when these people, and how hard they work, there are some that came here from Trinidad, Uruguay, etc. Okay, that's not dismissible, but there also are some that did it the right way. They got their legal statuses and all that stuff, and then here they have to come here, start a whole new life, because of what's happening in their own country. And of course, even though they're here and they're American citizens, that's still their place where they grew up. That's still their home country. That's still in their hearts. And so, to see that Venezuela get Donald Trump as kind of like, not necessarily the president, but like somebody that is overseeing and helping overseeing their economy after it crashed so badly under Maduro. I think it's just a win-win for the Venezuelan people. And I will say this again, guys that are watching. There doesn't really seem to be a split on this issue. There's more support for it than not. And if you check out the legalities of this, what I've currently read is that the you call it the Gang of Eight, right? The Congressional Gang of Eight. They were briefed on this issue while it took place, and they try to keep it really close to who knew about this extraction of Maduro, because they didn't want any leaks. And Trump has operated like that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen him operated like that since the beginning of his Trump 2.0. Is he's very limited to what he's telling the news when it comes to these national or international type of issues that are dire if they were to leak. So and I think that helped to protect American lives, the military, and the DOJ, sector, all those that went over and completed this grand mission. But yeah, I think that the way he's going about this is just spectacular. Like, it's unprecedented. The next thing that I saw on the news was ICE agents. So this has constantly been a thing with ICE since Trump has deployed them to take out illegal immigrants and those who have arrest warrants. So they're literally doing their job. They literally have the warrants to go and get certain people and take them in, and they're being obstructed by Americans, and it's wild. So now we have this case in Minneapolis, and now more of the footage have come out before we were doing this podcast live, is that this ICE agent is pretty much innocent. And it's a very sad situation. I hate that this woman this woman who's a mom of three ended up losing her life. I'm not sure how she became this radicalized, where she just disregarded all the things that could happen, or even the lives that she cared for, if she were no longer present. I've read that her husband is no longer, or the father of the kids are no longer in the picture. She was with another woman as a partner. And it's like, to put all that on the line, and she wasn't even from the state. So to put all that on the line for this obstruction, and then to disobey the orders of the ICE agents and try to run them over, and she did actually hit him, and then to lose her life. I wish it didn't happen like that, but unfortunately it did. And I think I saw another clip before this live podcast today, of just riots taking place, or I think it was like a riot or a protest at a Hilton hotel where ICE agents were staying. And it's just like, it's not necessarily the ICE agent's fault. He was doing his job. He had proper documentation to do that job. You parked your car in a way and obstructed that. And if I'm truthful about this, even though it's super sad, the ICE agent is not at fault. and
Yeah.
she's going to have the backing of the Trump administration in this case, anyways. What are your
Well,
thoughts on this?
I think there's been some information released that she could have been a paid actor,
Mm,
and you heard her wife or significant other, like, you know, cheering her on. And I know this sounds harsh, but if you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. I hate that she died, and I hope that she knew Jesus in her heart.
me
I
too.
would never wish anyone, not even my worst enemy, to ever be separated eternally from God. But I also, these people, they know what they're getting themselves into, and the people that are sending them. And so, you know, this person had enough thinking to maliciously run someone over. They had the competency to understand the consequences of that, of those actions. So it's just like, if a child sex offender hurts a child, they should get the death penalty. I have no sympathy for that. Do I think that they should be offered Jesus? Yes. So in this situation, even going back, look at Nick Shirley. It
Mm,
took him going up there and doing his journalism and locating all that money, which now has implicated that the US government is involved in the money laundering. And because of that, now the FBI was forced to issue a public statement. Now they're going up there and they're doing this bigger investigation. When Cash Patel put out his statement, the data that he was releasing wasn't from recent, that was from 2022 and beyond. So it's your everyday American citizens
yeah.
that are getting involved, like you, like me, and others, that will not sit back and let this country go up in flames, and are saying, I mean, Nick Shirley used his iPhone.
Yeah.
Anybody could do that. And as a result of that exposure, now all of this is happening. So you saw how all that led into where we are now. And now you've got these riots that are starting at these hotels and all over the place. So, and you got Nick Sorter out there. He exposed the Hilton Hotel.
Yeah.
And then there is another guy from South Carolina, actually, Chad Caton. If you're on X, it's at I'm Fired Up. He's actually been in a lot of these places as well. So I know there's many more people that are involved. So I think that while the loss of a life is sad, um, thank God that that ICE agent is alive and he's okay. I don't know if he's, in the hospital or recovering, but
Yeah.
I know that's harsh, but you play stupid games, you get stupid prizes. And I hate that. I hate their life was lost. I'm a little bit more brutal on that front, but I mean, he was acting defensively. If someone came into my home and broke into my home and they had a gun, I have every right to stand my ground to shoot them. And if they die, they die. They should have thought about that before they broke into my home.
Mm. Yeah,
Sorry, go
I,
ahead.
I I do agree with you on that. It's a harsh reality, and it's hard to, I guess, it's sad to be so blunt, but that because people could make these decisions where it costs them their lives, and again, I wish it didn't happen. I wish she didn't lose her life, but um, the truth is, like we mentioned, the ICE agent is in the right for defending self-defense. She put him in a position to defend himself. Sorry. Um, when you mentioned Nick Sortel, sorry, was he? Because I remember seeing something on the news about the hotel, the Hilton Hotel, basically taking down their sign, and I guess they shut down one of the sites because this hotel refused to accommodate ICE agents. Was he a part of that?
Exactly. Yes, he exposed the Hilton Hotel. Hilton kind of waffled on this whole thing, and that what ended up happening was that when they came forward and they were going after that, um, they issued a statement like they they are not turning people away. But then he pushed back, and there was more back and forth. But then what ended up happening was they ended up taking that Hilton sign down. So that was interesting. Sorry, guys, I had some people walking through here. So Nick Sorter was involved in that. I know Nick Shirley has been involved in some of that. There's a woman as well that was up in another state. I can't remember her name, but she was also, reporting on some of this as well. And I'm so sorry I can't remember her name. I'd love to give her credit, but
I just got in I just got in something that's for Nick Sorter. Some news that said Antifa came after Nick Sorter and the police hung up on him. That's when he tried
Yep.
to call the police about it. So
He was actually trying to organize security, on the ground security for him, for himself. And what's interesting is that actually Chad Caton from South Carolina was one of the ones that answered that call, and he's like, I'll see you over there. So these are people, everyday American citizens, that are getting out there and doing their job. And look, I back the blue. I support law enforcement. I don't support
yeah,
the law enforcement that's corrupt. And unfortunately, you've got a bunch of pansies in some of these areas that are not like our brave men and women that serve behind the badge, on a day to day basis. Um, but there, these threats come.
yeah.
They come when you expose things, and what's so crazy to me is somebody like Nick Shirley, who now, oh my gosh, I cannot remember his name. Um, Maybe Michael, the producer, will remember, but this guy has put up security, is paying for security for
Oh
Nick
yes,
Shirley now.
yes.
So that's what we as Americans have to worry about. Like, if we expose something, we have to then worry about legal fees for exposing something, which is our right to do. And then we have to worry about, security. We have to worry about, you know, the cost of that. And that's so
Hmm.
wrong. Why should we have to worry about that? We shouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about like Nick Shirley, I mean, you mentioned that he like that company, I believe he doesn't even pay for them. They offered to protect him because they knew he needed it.
Mhm.
And I believe he received death threats after doing that exposure too. So
Mhm.
so this you're right. Like these are independent journalists, just like you and I, who are not afraid. And kudos to him, for not being afraid to do this investigation and bring it to light. And I remember you teaching me something early on in politics. You taught me a few things, but I remember in regards to this situation, um, that you said that the president, for example, is only one man and he can't have his eyes every single place. And that's where it takes, certain people he has in positions as well as us to be the eyes and ears. And I even saw that when I went to a Republican meeting. It was with Moms for Liberty, how they uncovered something in our own state where they saw that there was a company that we had hired, lawmakers had hired, or not even lawmakers, but the educational system had hired and put into play to basically come and bring in the transgender ideology and all this stuff. And of course, our senators and stuff, they didn't have any idea about this, but this woman went and did some deep investigation. And she said that what she did is she put a binder together of everything, and she went to our senators with a heart of humility, and as if and coming from a place of, I'm going to assume they didn't know because it's against the law what this company is doing. So she put a binder together, went to them very professionally, and said, how can I help you to make sure that we are abiding by the law in this state? And she said they were very receptive, and they immediately pulled all of the information from that site. That site is no longer even, doesn't even have the same information anymore. You would never even know that that went on in the state because they completely cleaned that up. So, it takes the people like us, like you mentioned, going in and doing these things and have a heart for that and to expose the stuff so that way, if you love this nation, we can preserve our nation and we can have the American values and the American dream, etc. And I think, Trump has done something incredible, which is he's restored the hope in the American dream. And I believe, um, even our boldness, to go and continue to do these things, I feel like he's restored that. Like when you think about these interagencies that weren't working together under Biden, now they have this confidence that they're working together and they're doing their job to uncover things or to, protect American citizens. And I remember in Colorado specifically, there was one agent that said they feel this renewed sense of purpose, is what was his word in the article, because Trump has put them all together and is backing them for doing their actual job and not telling them, oh, wait till sit down and don't do anything, or don't go, don't do this, don't do that. But just basically saying, you signed up for this, do this, right? Um, So yeah, I think not only as the law enforcement and these interagencies feeling it, but the American people, especially the conservatives who love this nation and want the American taxpayer dollars to go to things that we are aware of they're supposed to be going to uncover this stuff. And if there is some type of fraud or something like that, it needs to be dealt with. I don't know if I haven't been in politics, as long as you and know as much as you, but I don't think I've ever seen, just listening to the news and stuff, the amount of corruption uncovered in such a small amount of time under any other candidate and under any other president. Like, it's just ongoing, the amount of fraud, waste, and abuse uncovered under President Trump. Um,
Yes, I will say there's probably more heightened exposure on it. And, I definitely want to lead with what Trump's accomplishments have been. I will say we have seen a lot of exposure, and I'm glad that Maduro was extracted. But, just recently, Clinton's didn't show up for their subpoena. Why aren't they handcuffed and behind bars? Obama has been implicated in a lot of the Russia hoax, all this stuff. We have a lot of exposure, but Americans are looking for accountability. I was talking to, let's just say, an older generation yesterday. I'm not going to say who it was, but and they're like, they've given up. They've personally that, and this is some of this age group I've talked to has given up hope on America ever being, restored or what they remember America as, because there's just, and I have hope that, because there's younger people going after this. So this is not my position, but they're like, there's just so much, going on. And so President Trump has accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
I think that we are in a place right now, in even this next month or two, that if we don't start seeing these indictments, um, and accountability, because the evidence is there.
yeah.
I mean, just this week, Representative Lauren Boebert was speaking in a congressional hearing. They were using aborted babies and implanting them with animals. And this is something that we've been funding. And this is not, I mean, this is not godly at all. But where is the accountability? So I think, and I know we need to talk about President Trump's accomplishments. I know we need to talk about the good things, but that's why there is this. Sorry, guys, ice cream truck is going by.
We can't hear
Actually,
it.
no,
It's
that's a
okay.
booze pops, and yeah, crazy. But anyways, so it's crazy that we don't have that accountability yet. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's President Trump's necessarily his fault, but he has people that maybe he's more loyal to because of previous relationships that don't have his best interest at heart.
Mm.
General Flynn just released, I think it was either on Bannon or it was one of these big programs not too long ago, and I think I can't remember which platform it was. I apologize, but there are there are people in Trump's circle that are targeting General Flynn and his wife again and his family, and targeting specific influencers like Alex Jones. He was on the Alex Jones show. They're targeting Bannon. They're targeting specific people that are asking for accountability.
Mm.
And then there's other people that are in the conservative movement that are independent journalists or whatever, influencers, and they want us to be just only talk about the good things, but not ask for accountability. And we're black pillars if we're asking for accountability. But then that is actually a communist socialist mindset, because you're saying, trust in the government solves all your problems, trust in one man. But never in the Bible did God say, sit back and watch me do everything. He actually invited us into the process and wants us to be engaged and to do something. And the government belongs in the hands of the people. So when we have these conservatives, I was blocked by Brendan Dilley this week for saying, you're acting like a donkey. I literally said a donkey. A donkey's behind. But you're coming after us because we're asking for this accountability. And that's how our government is designed, is a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yeah.
So that's I know I'm going off on a tangent, but that's kind of where I think we're at, is that, this accountability is key. And I encourage people to keep asking questions, and asking where the indictments are. But I think we should talk about the great things that he's done. I actually have an entire list of all the wonderful things he's done since he came into
I
office.
think that's a great point to bring up too, is the accountability portion, because you're right. We can say at least, just to round it up, 80 million Americans voted for Donald Trump, and we trusted that he's not a part of the institution or the elite, right? He's different, and he's so different that we saw this attack on him in his first term, so we knew something was up, right? And then all of a sudden, all this attacks on him, and then finds out that he's completely innocent when it comes to the whole Russiagate thing, right? That kind of almost stalled his first term, even though it still came out, pretty good in terms of inflation and other things. But I think we can talk about the good part of that, but also talking about how far we haven't, where we haven't gotten yet. And I don't know for sure if it's the fact of trying to have enough evidence to make things stick, or if it's the immunity thing. We talk about Obama, for example. I don't know. But I do agree with you that if we can see these arrests made once these things come out, it's much it's easier for us to believe what we've seen in terms of the evidence of what was done. For example, we look at Obama, we look at Hillary Clinton, and what's the other guy's name that was head of the FBI? Uh, is it
James Comey.
James Comey? Thank you.
Yeah,
James Comey.
you had several people, and the fact of the matter is, you still have people that are very incompetent. In my opinion, this is my opinion. Like, Blondie should not be. She should
I
be
knew you were gonna
replaced.
say.
I would have fired her last year with all her little appearances. Like when she came out and she had this whole staged Epstein thing. The
Yeah.
fact that we aren't doing anything about Epstein. I know some of these survivors. I don't know why President Trump was saying it was a hoax or whatever. I don't know if that was just whatever.
I think I'm going to lean on what I've heard Mike say, as well as poor messaging, and the fact that
Yeah.
Trump is not. He's never been even, and I think this is why people didn't like him in his first term. Not to throw any shade on the Epstein stuff, okay? But he's not like, he doesn't do the political jargon. He's very much blunt and straightforward with minimal words. He doesn't have it polished like JD Vance and like Mark Rubio, right? Marco Rubio, I'm sorry. You can see a stark contrast, but he's definitely needed between the two in the messaging, and I think he came from the place of, like, this is we don't this is a distraction. This is what the Democrats are pushing for it. So if they're pushing for it, there has to be something there that they're just trying to get us distracted from what we Republicans need to do, and try to get us divided on this issue, so that we don't focus on the main goal. And I think he did have a point there, but at the same time, we also have to address the issue that these women were violated, and they deserve answers. They deserve there should be some accountability, right? The American people deserve also answers. So yeah, I agree with you on both of those fronts.
But to talk about some of the good things, you go back to our borders. We've gone from massive influx of Islamic terrorists and cartel and all these people crossing, down to secure borders. Now, I will say the southern border, I am actually working on something right now that there's still open areas in our northern border with Canada. I've had people tell me about Chinese individuals trying to cross, and there's like Chinese people that are laying dead in the across the borders. Now, I don't have any of that as fact, and I don't know anyone that's reporting on that. So if that's something that's your cup of tea and you want to get out to the border and check that out, be my guest. I spent some time there, but he also, in January 20th through the 31st in 2025, issued multiple EOs restoring biological definitions and federal policy on biological truth, affirming two sexes. January 20th, in his address, Trump emphasized one nation under God, invoking Christian themes of redemption and national renewal. That was the first thing. He reinstated the Mexico City policy and Hyde Amendment enforcement defunding international and domestic abortion providers. He just pulled out of like I think Michael, you have to and Aisha tell me, but he pulled out of over
66.
Thank you. I was going to say 60. You got me. Over 66 organizations and affiliations globally. That's huge. Um, he ended the military DI programs and reinstated service members discharged for COVID-19. Now, this is still an issue. One guy on the 31st of December, actually, a brigadier general, I think it was, he was not able to keep his position, but they still sent him out. They established the White House Faith in Office Centers for Faith in Every Agency. Of course, we know that education international hostage releases ended the COVID-19 vaccine mandates. I'm going
Let's
through my
take
list.
just a minute from the accomplishments. I just want to get to our first sponsor, and then we'll
Yeah.
get right back into the accomplishments as well. So, want to share one of our first sponsors is your skincare. I love this brand, guys. I've been using this brand since 2023. They are a skincare and makeup brand. You'll find both of those options on their website and as well as on Amazon. If you want to check out their website, I would highly encourage you to screenshot that link there, or even screenshot that card on your screen. Or if you're in the show notes, you can see that link and you'll be able to click on that link. That link will take you to their website, where once you subscribe, you make any purchases, you will get a discount. They will also provide you free birthday gifts. They'll provide you with free refills on anything you purchase, and also free shipping. They do ship within 3 business days, which we all love. And their stuff is all clean. They're made to use when you are pregnant. This was the one brand that I used when I was pregnant with my daughter, who I had last September. And I actually only used this brand because I knew their stuff was actually clean enough for me and safe. Their stuff is also made here in the USA, and I just love their options. They have something for everyone. When you get on their website, what you're going to find is that they have an AI skincare tool that once you put your information in, it's going to ask you about your demographic information, about some of your routines that affect your skin, so that it can give you a actual routine that will work for the issues that you're facing based off of your lifestyle. And I think that's a lot more targeted, and you get a lot more effective use from products you're purchasing when that information is given, because you get the right products for your actual issues. So yeah, so you can check them out. Also, if you want to shop them on Amazon and not go through the website and you miss all those perks like the free birthday gifts, refills, and shipping, you can shop my Amazon storefront. That's also in the show notes. My Amazon storefront is Aisha Schreiner, if you want to look that up. And if you check out anything on Amazon, you can use that code Aisha15 off, and it will give you 15% off of any products you're purchasing from your skincare. So highly recommend you guys check them out if you love skincare and good makeup products that are all clean, okay, and also highly effective. They get the job done. Okay, so back to Trump accomplishments. Don't forget, I just had this energy. I want to think. I didn't know if you had this written down or not, but I thought about the fact that he did an EO for English language, making that the official language of the United States. I thought that was pretty cool, because I remember when I went to Chile back in 2013. One of the things they attacked me with, and they love Americans, okay? So not saying that this was like a literal attack, but I remember one of the things they were like, your nation doesn't have an official language. You don't even have an official top dish. Well, I mean, what do you guys eat during football? Like pizza or burgers and fries? I'm like, oh, they're right. I started thinking through these things, because when you go to their country, they got an official language, they got an official dress, they got an official dance, they got, there's a culture to be had. And you talked about the border. Securing that border is a part of what builds that culture, builds like a selective assimilation amongst people, where we understand that this is our culture and want to protect that. So yeah, I'll let you continue on with some of those accomplishments.
Yeah, and of course, Operation Midnight Hammer against Iran nuclear threats.
Oh, yeah.
This prevented nuclear advancement, and some people were really opposed to this. I personally was not opposed to that. I'm opposed to foreign wars and funding other countries before America, but in this situation, I was supportive of that. There was implementation of I'm trying to see. There was several things I could go over.
Oh
I
my
made
God.
this huge long list. Oh, there it is. Okay, so legislative and military reforms. I mean, I have like pages and pages of all
Listen,
of these things.
just his first 100 days was a mouthful, like
Yeah.
if you wouldn't, I remember I was trying to track every single thing he was doing in the first 100. I'm like, dang, do presidents usually do this much, EOs and much changes like this quickly? It was incredible.
I do think we are. I think this is just my educated guess. I think we are going to see some staff changes. We've heard it, and Dan Bongino. I think was already planned. I think he had only planned to stay there for a year. I personally think he's been sent out as a mouthpiece to help, you know, certain, optics. That's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. I don't like how he came out attacking people, but I do think we have only a couple of months to take seriously what's happening for these midterms. And I think a lot of people are not taking this seriously. And I think one of the greatest threats that we have is the infiltration of the Islamic State in America. Now, look,
Oh,
one of
yes.
my mentors and friends, Laura Logan, has said, there are Muslims that don't operate this way, and I understand that. And in fact, when I'm in DC and I have an Uber driver that's Muslim, I've shared the gospel with them and every time they've given their life to the Lord because the harvest is ripe. But
Wow.
I will say that this is a huge issue. We're seeing look at New York with
Mhm.
Mamdani.
Yeah.
He appointed his chief counsel was the person who defended the terrorists from 9/11.
Yeah.
We're looking at even South Carolina um, has infiltration of the Islamic State, and it's wedged itself into our leaders. Our leaders are working with CARE on legislation. This is a big deal. So, and even Laura Loomer has talked about this. And there's someone that's in the Ex American News Network that's a former child bride from Iran, and Annie. And so I think
Yeah.
that we have
Yeah.
to start taking this seriously.
I agree with you 100%. And I remember Charlie Kirk hitting on this, and talking about this threat. And the sad thing is that, speaking of Charlie Kirk, you see other conservatives like, I don't look up to them by any means, but Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, who are not necessarily focused on new stuff or saying the same things that Charlie Kirk was saying. And I think, and Charlie Kirk was 100% right, like even down to housing. And he even talked about, which I know we'll get to maybe later in this podcast when we talk about affordability, about these institutions buying up, corporate institutions just buying up these homes, and leading us now into they're part of the reason why we're in this crisis we are now in with inflation and stuff, and not having just the homes issue. That there are not a lot of conservatives that are actually hitting on these things. It's like they're so busy infighting and having all that they're not even focused on the thing we should be focused on. And that's why I really loved Charlie Kirk, was because he constantly kept it there. Even through the infighting, he was singular on the America First agenda. Yeah, I think when we talk about the midterms, when you ran through the accomplishments of Donald Trump, the one thing I remember, if we go through and try to dissect the Democrats and what may be their angle going into the midterms, what may they have an upper hand on that the Republicans don't. So first, we talked about the border. You mentioned that as something that was that was an accomplishment of Trump. The border was something they were screaming about, and all that. And I hardly hear any news on that right now, except for Trump saying the border's closed. And he talk about that accomplishment. And then there was the whole thing of I guess you had illegal immigration tariffs. Before we get to legal immigration, tariffs, right? That we're going to start tariff wars and all these things, and that wasn't the case, and still isn't the case. I pray to God it never is the case, but I don't think that's at all where Trump was going with it. And I think he may have known better. Either God is, helping this man through this, or he's extremely, extremely wise, or both. But the fact that he took this controversial route, looking, and I think Trump looks a lot back. He looks back at our history, as well, to kind of make these decisions too, because before we got into taxing the American people, there was tariffs. So, that was a whole issue. And now hardly anybody's talking about that because there's nothing really bad to say about it yet. or I don't know, there will be. So it's like he shut down these constant naysayers, and there's always something more. I feel like the Democrats is trying to call out, and they have to in order to try to win, in order to try and stay in power because their ratings are extremely low. Um, and now the whole thing gets to affordability because that's an issue that is, I believe, like subjective. It's very, very hard to measure this. And even though we have a lot of wins in this area, and we can actually call out the companies that have come to the States, we can call out the millions, or should I say billions of dollars that Trump has brought in and continues to rake in now with Venezuela. We can say all those things, but then when you get down to the individual level, this is a whole nother issue, unless you want to talk about the fact that gas prices is coming way down now. The whole
Yeah.
egg scare is over with. There, you can see his policies and you can see what he's doing start to take effect. The fact that it hadn't take effect in his within his first year 100% fully is because that's not how the economy works, right? And I remember Mike saying this again. I agree with him. Is poor messaging. Like, talk about, even though we have all these great things coming in and what it's going to mean great things for the American people. I think Trump as a businessman, maybe at the individual level, you have to also talk about, when will we see those effects? How will that look to the individual everyday life? What would that look towards inflation and in terms of home buying for young people? Like those types of things for what you're bringing in, I think would help with this affordability message. But I'll say this and then I'll turn it over to you. So I think personally that this whole Venezuela thing, like I feel like Trump has secured two things, not only just like our national security and stuff, but I'm talking about the midterm specifically, is that he's kind of shutting up the whole affordability screaming. And he's also, I think maybe they'll hit on the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, but he's doing all of these, every argument basically the Democrats have had, he's kind of silencing it, you know um and I think and I heard Trump mention this too, is that usually when you have a party that has the House and the Senate, they don't typically win the midterms, and I think he's trying to turn that around this time.
So I want to push back a little bit on just the Democrats because let's look at the national scale first.
Okay.
Thune, you've got Thune in there. If Thune busted down the filibuster, we could push through President Trump's agenda. Would have already pushed through so much. So we have Republicans. We have a Republican majority in these areas, and yet we still haven't confirmed all of President Donald Trump's appointments. We haven't been, we haven't implemented into law his EOs. There's been some representatives that have asked for this, and so I look at it as the uniparty. That is, I don't think it's just Democrat. In fact, I would tell you there's just as much on the left as there is on the right. And the reason I say that is because we're sitting here and they could be helping him pass his agenda and getting things done, helping, in so many ways. The other piece I'll say, if you look at it at a state level, this past week in South Carolina, District 98, which is my state house district, it wasn't the guy that I originally wanted in, but we actually, there was a exposure of a Republican council person, Todd Friddle, and I didn't expose this, by the way. This is Jacqueline Tolucci, so I did not expose this. I do not take credit for it. But Todd Friddle, there was messages that were put out where, they were basically saying that Greg would lose Coosaw and one other area, and this is a special election. So now it's a Democrat versus the Republican, and the Republican won by 21 votes. But that is because the Republicans got into bed with the Democrats because they didn't want Greg in office. And so, and we see this, we have open primaries. I can't tell you how many doors I've knocked on, and the Democrats are like, yeah, we're voting in the Republican primaries so that your other person, the real conservative, doesn't get in. And so that's what we're dealing with when we take a look at this has been mobilized as a weapon, not just against the American people, but also against President Trump. So this is why, he's coming out so strong with so many different things. But I'm hoping that, I mean, even Mike Johnson, there's been a lot of sketch stuff that's been exposed on him. He might be a believer, but there's been a lot coming out against him as well. So I think that we have to look at the attack plan. They're trying to keep power. And if we don't really get some strong conservatives in the midterms, and we don't start now, like people sitting at home watching this saying, government's not my thing, voting's not my thing, campaigns isn't my thing. Well, then don't whine to me when you have a Mom Donnie in your own state, implementing Sharia, or another place that I just saw that said, it was another country that said the women need to wear hijabs. This is where we're headed. And if you don't think it's not already here, it is. And so that's why people tell me that, and I'm like, I don't have time for you. I have no grace for it at all. Other people do, but I don't. So I would say that it's a uniparty thing. I mean, even looking at our state AG that's running for governor.
Yeah.
And I won't jump ahead, but I just want to kind of push back on that, and just, I hear people say they just want to say left and just Democrats, but it's actually the uniparty. Sorry, guys, they're putting new floors in. My husband is working hard.
I thought that was me. I was sorry, because sometimes my neighbor cuts the grass. It's okay. Okay, so I do want to get this to the SC elections. But just a minute before we do, because I know we're hitting time. Do you have any insight into the ACA? What are your Affordable Care Act? What are your thoughts on what the Trump administration should do there, right? Because if we do nothing, aren't those premiums going to go up? Like, what's your insight there?
We just had, I think it was 9 Republicans in Congress. I think it was in Congress. I could be wrong. Michael, do you have the stats on that? Is it 9?
Yeah, we had 9 undocumented Democrats vote with the left to restore ACA subsidies.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. That's what I thought it was.
How long is that
for the next 3 years?
Yep. So then you merge into the next presidential election, and I don't think we should have it at all. I actually heard someone, I'm not very nice. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm not sorry. I heard someone at a recent gathering over the holidays. They're from Germany. Their wife is from America. And they're talking about how great it is to have healthcare over in other countries, because you don't have to pay anything. And then if you lose your job, the government still pays you. And I'm like, it's not the government's job to take care of us. We are the government. We should be accountable and responsible for ourselves. That's what the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution has prescribed. Okay. So I think they should throw it out, personally.
Yeah, I don't know. I have to look more into that before I want to comment on it. But I will say this: do you think that aids us in shutting down the whole crisis, or the whole hollering about affordability? Do you think that quenches it and pushes us toward a win?
I think you got to look at the maybe the larger picture is the hospitals and the medical big pharma. No, I mean, if you don't have medical insurance and you go to a hospital and you say, how much will it cost for me to through the childbirth and everything? It's like a couple $1,000s, let's say. Yes. I know
it's over like $8,000 now.
But if you have insurance, then it's like triple that. And that's because insurance contracts with these places to pay them that. So they're both getting more money. And then if you have insurance, you're punished. But if you don't have insurance, a lot of times you can pay a lot cheaper cash options. So for me, I think you got to look at the big, larger scale and shutting down big pharma. What is in it for them? And looking at these hospitals and corporations, a lot of them are owned, like overall company owns both the hospitals and the pharmaceutical companies. I mean, it's a big mess.
I love this. I got this from Mike. He said, it isn't affordable if the only way to get the price down is to force your neighbors to pay for it.
It's socialism 101.
Yeah, I was just thinking that when you said that about the guy that wanted, the government to pay for it all.
And he
Um,
was complaining about small businesses and corporations in America, and talking about Republicans, even in South Carolina, they're trying to go get into bed with some of these large corporations, like the Volkswagen dealership or the Volkswagen plant, and then building electronic vehicles. And then it happens that um, not that much later, overseas, they're shutting down those places because it's not financially lucrative.
mm.
And we've got data centers going in, you've got Dominion Energy increasing things, and it's all a matter of what's in your wallet when we're talking about these legislators.
As much as I want to dive so much more into this affordability thing, maybe we can dissect it a little bit more next time. But
Yeah.
I want to get you to chat with us about the SC elections, because I know I have people from South Carolina that are watching this and they want information um, on those who are running, who are we endorsing, and why, and any exposure on any of the candidates that are running that we need to be aware of.
So I will say that I'm dedicating the next few months to oppositional research and going after some of these people. But let's start out with a gentleman that's running for AG of South Carolina, David Pascoe. There's been a lot of hits coming after him because he was a Democrat and now he's a Republican. And I'll say personally, based on his record of prosecution of corrupt officials, that he was probably more conservative than he was Democrat. Did he support previous Democrats? Maybe. But he was appointed by the AG to go after corrupt politicians. And that's what he did. So in this case, he switched his party. It made national headlines. But he actually went after the former Speaker of the House. His corruption investigation resulted in convictions of the South Carolina House Speaker, not the current one, state Senate President, and there was others. So he's actually going to form, as a part of his campaign, what he's talking about is a public corruption unit. His track record, even in prosecuting offenders, is high. He has a successful track record. And when I speak with victims behind the scenes and survivors, they actually speak very highly of David Pascoe. I've personally spoken with him. I endorse him before you've ever announced a run or anything. I said, I will support him. So I urge people to actually get with me. If you haven't seen his record, I fully support him in his run. He's on X. He's excellent.
Now, speaking of AG, let's talk about the current one, Alan Wilson, because I do have some footage that I was planning on releasing maybe closer to our elections here in South Carolina. When I went to the GOP dinner where I was able to interview a lot of these candidates that were running for governor, and Alan Wilson was one of them. Before I dug any deep, went into looking at anything controversial about their life, I had these interviews with them. So when I heard Alan Wilson talk, I'll say this: the guy talks a really good game. He hits on every single thing you would want. Talks about how he supports Trump, the work that he's done as Attorney General. However, I will let you comment on some of the controversies, and I've literally seen these same controversies that you're going to talk about online. You are not the only one that's saying it. So, but you have more information that I would say and more insight than I do. So I will let you hit on him a little bit.
So let's stick to facts. He absolutely sucks. He just announced his running mate right here, Mike Rickenbach, who has an F rating. Okay, I printed this from online. Thank you to Kelly McCarty for posting this. His Freedom Index score is a 47. He's worse than Democrats. He has an F rating. So that's number one.
Wow.
Number two, this man is a pedophile protector by his own record. So first of all, I'll talk about Emily Hollis, a 12-year-old who was sexually groomed almost a year ago, abducted, taken across state lines. South Carolina Department of Health and Human Services certified it as a human trafficking case. And Alan Wilson still has yet to prosecute this. And I have found out, because the child ended up in Florida, I found out that in Florida, They are stopped on their investigations because the AG's office, who has a human trafficking task force, is actually blocking it. Her rape kit still sits up at SLED unprocessed. Now, she might be 13 as of now. They refuse to prosecute in this. And in fact, in Beaufort, they're actually pushing back and trying to hurt the family. Now, there's another case that it's underneath my highlights tab on my X profile of two little boys. Now they're older, that they were raped by a particular individual multiple times. Anal tissue in a medical exam, I've seen the forensic reports, was harmed. And that person was pretty good buddies with the former sheriff of Spartanburg, who's now under federal investigation and charges, and is also friends with Alan Wilson. The former sheriff actually was on of Spartanburg. Chuck Wright called Alan Wilson on his cell phone with the multiple people in the office, and he promised to investigate this case. After we aired the video with one of the child advocates, we had 154,000 views on that video in 24 hours. A case was reopened. But there are still no charges that has been brought against this individual. Another case at the national level is the Scott Spivey case. Scott Spivey was murdered. Alan Wilson is incompetent, still hasn't pressed charges there. RJ May, former Republican state legislator, Alan Wilson dropped several charges on him. I can be corrected on this. Nancy Mace did a FOIA request for Dorchester County. And in that case, over 90% drop rate of child sex offenders in Dorchester County alone, and high plea deals. This is across the state. The rate of human trafficking has increased over 450% as of his last reporting.
Wow.
We also have another case, which is Eric Blaine Powers. His first, I guess, charges, the first time he was ever charged, he was dropped down to a misdemeanor, and then he reoffended again. That's another one. And then you have another name I can give you, Donald Gresh. He served 1 day in jail after Alan Wilson prosecuted him for having 19 images of children as young as 3 being raped by animals. This convicted pedophile was facing 60 years in jail, and Alan gave him a day.
Wow. Okay, I want us definitely. We'll probably get another time where I can get you on the podcast.
So there's numerous. He's bad.
I'm sure. And this is not. I've not only heard this from you, but I've seen this online, and I love the fact that you bring stats because you're an investigative journalist. You've done that, and that research. So if you can, and in the last minute that we have, if you can hit on. Oh, is your mic good?
Yeah.
Okay, good. At the last minute, if you could hit on the person running for governor, who we both agree, I think would be a great candidate for governor. We got like a minute left.
Yeah, absolutely. Ralph Norman, he is a congressional representative of South Carolina. He is the only one that is opposed to the hate crimes bill backed by CARE, working with legislators in South Carolina. This is a welcome act for Sharia. And it is, CARE is funded and founded by Hamas in addition to others. So that's one reason. He's a businessman. He has a extremely conservative record.
Yes.
He's great. And even when I've had to call him about certain cases or things that are happening in the state, he picks up the phone and he helps me. He does what he says he's going to do. So I support him hands down.
I do agree too. I couldn't find anything like controversial that he's done, or anything that he said or said that he would do, anything that contradicts his stance, or anything that he says he's valued in terms of policy. He's very clean. So like he'd be a really good candidate. And he's also a Christian man. So that's probably why. Okay, man, this was great. Lynz, I wish we had more time, but maybe we can get you back on. Of course, I'm going to get you back on when we get closer to those elections and for our state, because we got to hammer that down. We got to talk about the different candidates. But I do want to thank you so much for bringing your insight, bringing all of the research into my podcast today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you guys want to connect with her, she has her own podcast, I Am Silent No More. I think this airs every Monday. What time?
4 p.m. Eastern.
4 p.m. Eastern. And then again, like I mentioned, she also has a book as well. In the book
I'm Silent No More.
that you can get on Amazon as well. So, Lynz, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank
And
you.
guys, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast. I hope it was very informative for you. Let's pray for our midterms and for Donald Trump continue to act with wisdom and for Venezuela as well. I thank you guys again, and I hope to see you all next week. Bye for now.